I'm Sergeant Robert Horton, United States Army Special Operations. I was a psychological operations specialist from 1999 to 2012, and I'm also a son of the American Revolution. And you are docked as a vessel by a doctor who is a registered harbor master by the port authorities and authorized by the Department of Transportation. And when you are docked by the doctor, you are then harbored in the harbor in a vessel in dry dock known as a hospital, which is considered to be a boat parked on the land. Okay? But when you're born and harbored by the harbor master in this vessel in dry dock, you are considered a ward of the state. So you are placed into a maternity ward. Why are you a ward of the state? Because you have not yet been brought under the laws of this old school Masonic system. Now, how they get you into this old school Masonic system is with the birth certificate. So you're considered a ward of the state or an outlaw because you're not yet under the laws of the old Masonic system until your mother signs a birth certificate. This is a commercial instrument, okay? This is saying that you are now owned and under the laws of this Masonic system, but you are owned and that you are nothing more than a piece of cargo or a vessel or a dead person that's presumed to be missing, dead, or lost at sea, right? This is a commercial instrument, okay? This is saying that you are now owned and under the laws of this Masonic system, but you are owned and that you are nothing more than a piece of cargo or a vessel or a dead person that's presumed to be missing, dead, or lost at sea, right? Once you're legged into this massive corporate construct, and it's a global construct, you are then subject to the laws of the state. State of affairs, not state of California or state of Nevada. We're talking global state of affairs. This whole system is enforced in the courts around the world. This whole system is enforced in the courts, and what they're enforcing is the elemental chart, his strategic metals contract, his styles manual, and the dictionary, which is basically the entire system. All of us are using the grammatical construct we all use. But this thing is set up to make sure that he always wins. Okay? This entire system is set up so that you never win. Everybody's playing this game. It's a big, old school Masonic system that they utilize to control the people and run the planet with. These Masons build governments. They build them and they defend them. What we're going to look at is where the crown derives its authorizations or its authorities that their entire system is based upon. Quick, let's go back and recover some American history, okay? Back when the colonies were founded, there was 13 colonies originally. Before the American Revolution broke out, our post office was the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania post office, the Benjamin Franklin post office, okay, or postal court, which is here. And once the American Revolution had broke out, the king had cut off our ability to conduct international trade and commerce out of that post office because we went to war against Great Britain, right? So the war, all wars vacate that kind of contract. So our shipping was cut off. After the American Revolution, we couldn't open commerce back up through this post office because we owed 1.6 million francs to the French for funding the American Revolution. So at that point, the King of Spain and the King of France argued over who was going to be the Postmaster General here in the United States to open it up to international trade and commerce. Right? Spain said that they had found America first. Christopher Columbus had discovered the New World first, and so they had rights to it. France said that without loaning America the 1.6 million francs, the United States wouldn't even be open for capture. But the King of Great Britain, still being the reigning monarch in the world, said those are my people, and I'm going to put my post office in up there and open this thing up to trade and commerce. You guys need to stand down. So that's how he became the Postmaster General of the United States. And the Canada location has always been attached to that postal location as well. So the King of Great Britain took tactical command and control of the entire North American continent in the process. So if the other reigning monarchs and dictators of the world wanted to come into our country, or the United States, and rape and pillage it for its natural resources and its goods, they'd have to go through him and his post office to do so. So everything that was shipped in and out of the country, all trade and commerce, he got a piece up through that post office. He is taking tactical command and control of the movement and shipment of all goods on planet Earth. That's his end goal. Okay, now there was a long-range objective that had been placed into motion here by the Crown, the Vatican, and London City and the Rothschilds, okay? And the reason the American Revolution had kicked off was because the United States wanted to float its currency into the global market, and because they based their monetary system on the value of the land, it never fluctuates. It's solid base, right? But the Rothschilds fluctuate gold and silver up and down in relation to what they have going on. And because our currency doesn't fluctuate, when these guys would drop the price of gold down, America could buy it up and eventually would become the global power on the planet. So the Rothschilds attacked the Crown, and the Crown said, you guys can't do that, and as a matter of fact, this is war against me, and I'm not going to let that happen. So that was the reason for the American Revolution. But the long-range objective was to get the United States to borrow money from these guys in an effort to surrender them back to Great Britain. And how that was going to work was you only get 3 chances to pay off the debt that you borrow from these guys. And if you can't pay it off, then the Crown will step in, pay the debt to these guys off for you, and then capture you back as part of his system or part of Great Britain. And you'd all become peasants and serfs again. And this entire thing revolved around the year 1999. This is an event horizon year, not just for the United States, but for the entire planet. Okay, so when the colonies had come out of the American Revolution and the king stepped in as Postmaster General for the United States, the U.S. Constitution was drafted, okay? And the U.S. Constitution outlined how the king's government was going to interact with the colonies in relation to international trade and commerce. Okay, and this thing was seen by Patrick Henry and the colonials as so tyrannical that they created the Bill of Rights, outlining, or I should say, laying out what it was that the King of Great Britain and that federal government, the Fed, would never have the power to infringe upon, because they knew that this king was so tyrannical, eventually he would enforce his authority into the states' territories and try to tell you what you could and couldn't say, what you could and couldn't write, right? The freedom of the press, that you couldn't bear arms, you wouldn't have the right to defend your country. So those things were all outlined here in the Bill of Rights, and those are the things the king would never have the power to infringe upon, ever. It was done. It was the only thing that ratified the U.S. Constitution. And they were not going to sign it. The colonials refused to sign it until these guys, the Fed, accepted this outline. The reason that 1999 is an event horizon year is because in 1999 was the end of the third and final international bankruptcy for the United States. And we were going to be surrendered back over to Great Britain because we couldn't afford to pay the debt to London and the Rothschilds and the 13 banking families off. But that meant that the U.S. Constitution had come to an end. It was over. It was the end of the third and final international bankruptcy, and the contract between us and Great Britain expired.
Then they incorporated the United States as a company, and they made the President of the United States the Chief Executive Officer, and they made the representatives of Congress managers. And so when people come to Congress, they're taught very quickly that their constituents are not what it's all about. What it's all about is for them to get on the dole of the federal government, which is there to enslave the people who live in the United States. That's what that is.
So what does that mean the U.S. Constitution had come to an end? Well, it was the end of the third and final international bankruptcy for the United States. And with the end of the third and final international bankruptcy, the King of Great Britain had to vacate the position as Postmaster General due to international banking law. And the trustee between us and Great Britain, or the bankruptcy, has always been the President of the United States. Well, if there's no more bankruptcy, then there's no more need for a trustee. The agreement with us and Great Britain is over. So, no bankruptcy, no trustee. So in 1999, there should not have been a presidential election held. The U.S. Congress should have been shut down, the Senate should have been shut down, everybody should have been fired, and we should have held a new constitutional convention and resubstantiated the entire government from the ground up. And they never told the American people about any of it. Now, with the end of the American Revolution, the United States didn't have a strategic metals contract in place. Okay, we weren't allowed to print and mint our own coinage, so we had to borrow it from these guys, from the Rothschilds and London City, authorized by the Crown, because the Crown has a strategic metals contract in place, and that's what we've been utilizing. In 1933, with the Great Depression, actually 1929, is when the beginning of the third and final international bankruptcy had started, or the end of the second had come to an end. Because we were borrowing money from these guys over here, we're now in usury with this system. Okay, so that is how we're captured in usury with these guys over here. We're using their money. We're not allowed to make or create our own. And as a matter of fact, we're borrowing it and paying it back with interest in hard natural assets.
Our Postmaster-General of the World Corporation, Colin Russell-J. Colin Gould, is an American hero.
I figured out that the post office was the central control to authorize the corporate structures of government in our day-to-day lives. When we would file for an LLC, we would file with the Secretary of State, whatever state we were in. However, what the state was not telling you is that they were taking the fees that you paid them, and then they were paying a usury fee to the post office for that entity to exist. However, we caught the post office in a bankruptcy condition where the post office lost its capacities because it ceased to exist. Those that are in bankruptcy do not have any contract rights. As we were learning about the construct of contract, it came down to the foundation of the flag, because the bearer and the owner of the flag also allows subcontractors, or what they would call federal contractors, to board the terms of that flag. But the flag of our country was wrapped up in a bankruptcy, and the bankruptcy ended in 1999. So what David and I did is we had filed for copyrights on that flag on the terms of the grammar, so now that if a federal contractor does come in, they would have to comply with the terms of the syntax to create a now space performance for the terms of the contract.
For a claimant and a defendant. So you're going to go ahead and say, yeah, I understand, and then you say you understand, UN means no, DER is contract, stand is standing, so you have no contract standing, now you're mute before the court. What happens when you're mute before the court? Then the judge can't see or hear you, and neither can the prosecution. So with the possessive claim of the contract.
And these prepositional phrases are cause, consequence, the verb of thinking, possession assignment, possession assignment, possession assignment.
See, now we're going to break this down further with the possession claim of a contract. Well, with the correct sentence, structure, communication, parse, syntax, grammar of the rules, regulations, codes, with avoidance by the perjury. Now, if you read this backwards, by becomes for, with becomes of. Then you bring in your verb as your second condition, and of is with is of, and it becomes, these are the opposite prepositions. So for the perjury of the avoidance is with the rules, regulations, and codes of the correct sentence structure, communication, parse, syntax, grammar, with the contract of the possessive claim with the facts by the claimant's knowledge. See, now the authority going backwards says the same thing as the authority going frontwards. The unique thing about our technology is all these facts are still facts. And the order of operations going backwards is just like having a math problem. If we go to a math problem, so you have 1 plus 2 equals 3, and 3 minus 2 equals 1. See, so we're going to reduce this into linear mathematics. Now, when you do a math problem, you've got a whole number coming in, you got a whole number coming out, you got a whole number conclusion, and you got a whole number to start with to work the problem backwards. So these are facts. Now an equal sign, and I don't care what type of math you want to do, add, subtract, multiply, divide, sine, cosine, tangent, trigonometry, calculus, equal signs do not affect any of the math that you're doing. Those are conclusions.
Yes.
So they're going to be your conjunctions, because they don't have any modifications to change anything in the formula. Now you have a plus 2, and you've got a negative 2. Well, when you do grafting in school, and you grafted, you were in motion going across your number systems. So because you're going from plus to minus, or minus to plus, these are called verbs. We put the 2, we gave that the verb thinking. Now after we factor that out, then what we have left is we have a plus and a minus, and that was called the preposition, or the position. For the bridge is over the water. For the water is under the bridge. Over and under are opposite prepositions, and both pictures are identical. And that's what we're doing here, is we're showing you, if it's true for a picture, then it's true for the values of the logic of sentence structuring as well.
So they were coming out of a third strike of a 70-year moratorium bankruptcy. 3 strikes and you're out. That's how it works under the 3-strike rule under international bankruptcy laws. So because of that, the guidelines, which were the Constitution for the presidency, was going to have to be vacated, which was going to, the United States Postal Service and the United States Postal Office was going to have to vacate under Title 39, Section 101, subsection A and subsection B. So they're going to have to breach their own fiduciary contract timelines. Simultaneously, as they made the breach, they were going to have to vacate the estate, which was the location of the presidency, because the original founding fathers were no longer there to sign off on an amendment or a correction to re-up the terms of the Constitution. Because the Constitution at that point, once they vacated, then it became a worthless document and they didn't have to follow the guideline. So in the upcoming election of 2000, I knew they were going to have to vacate the presidency of the United States. I did not know how, but I knew they had to. In June of 2000, my grandmother was very concerned that because I was being bashed so hard through the public purview and I was going in and out of jail because of my learning on the timelines and the flag and the things that I was doing in the U.S. judicial system, that she wanted me to go back to college because I was so smart. She said I could do whatever I wanted. And so I made a deal with her that if they announced a president on the election night of 2000, that I would go back to college. And she had a presidential placemat with all the presidents on there. And I said, Grandma, you believe there's going to be another president? She goes, absolutely. And I said, and you believe that it's going to be elected on the first Tuesday of November of 2000 here? And she said, yes. I said, okay, I guarantee you that they will not elect the president. Guaranteed. On that night, I said, I don't know how, but I'm guaranteeing it. But if I'm wrong, I'll go back to college in January for the winter semester. If not, I'm going to continue forward on my path because I am who I say.
Stand by. CNN right now is moving our earlier declaration of Florida back to the too close to call column. 25 very big electoral votes in the home state of the governor's brother, Jeb Bush, are hanging in the balance. This no longer is a victory for Vice President Gore.
Vice President has recalled the governor and retracted his concession.
But this race is simply too close to call. And until the recount is concluded and the results of Florida become official, our campaign continues.
Bill Daley, the chairman of the Gore campaign, you just heard it, We're all, I think we can hardly believe our ears. He said, until the results are official and certified in the state of Florida, we are going to continue our campaign.
We hope and believe we have elected the next President of the United States. They're still counting, and I'm confident when it's all said and done, we will prevail.
For every successive hour from this point on, CNN will be your network to find out what is the latest on that presidential race.
That's right.
In the United States.
So stay with CNN because whatever is happening, we are going to be bringing it to you.
And folks, in the year 2004, please, could you make up your minds a little more conclusively? Because I think we can't take another election like this one.
I believe the people of Palm Beach County have entrusted us with the power to voice their right to participate in their government. And given the totality of the circumstances here, I move that this board conduct a manual recount of all the ballots for the presidential election for the year 2000.
Quite honestly, this is a situation that I think is new to everyone. I believe we have the authority to request of the Secretary of State or Department of Elections an advisory opinion, and it would be my intent as chair to do that.
Jackie, how were those votes counted?
Do you have an hour? I can explain it. It was pretty complicated. First, you have to know that the punch hole is called a chad. It is attached to the ballot by 4 threads. The commissioners had decided that if it had been detached by only 1 thread, it would not be counted as a vote. 2 detachments, maybe. 3 definitely counted as a vote. At some point in the process, that was changed. And the commissioners decided that any chad that was detached to any degree would be counted. Now, there are 2 other strange sounding categories that were not counted. The first one is called the dimpled chad. That is that there is an indentation in the chad. The voter put some pressure on it, but didn't detach it at all from the ballot. Not counted. The final category is the pregnant chad. That is, the chad was pierced with a hole, but not detached at all. Those were not counted. Now, the Republicans here, Koki, seized on all of this confusion. They said, see, we told you this is a deeply flawed process. It must stop. But as we know, the county commissioners here have decided not to stop. They will go for a full recount beginning tomorrow.
I said, somebody with the knowledge can predict that, and there are people behind the scenes playing a ruse on the American people who know the same storyline. I don't know who they are, but I guarantee you that they will not announce a president tonight. And she looked at me and said, if this is true, you're the smartest person walking the planet. Got on my hands and knees, and I was very thankful that night that everything came true, that they could not announce a president, that I had the flag, that we were in position to make a difference for the people, and I continued my plight and my learning from there on. So from that night on, I held the secret that there was no presidency, even though some people knew that there was no constitution, that they did not have a flag, they did not have a military, they did not have a treasury, they did not have any ports, they did not have any department within their construct of government because the founding fathers were no longer there to be sign off on a continuance. So I did everything I could, but in contract law, they did not have the right, both in the legality and in the law, to be in position to trick us into these wars. And I did everything within my power to stop that, which is well documented by the Pentagon.
No one has ever gone to war over a math problem in the history of mankind, but they've been killing each other over the adverb-verb communication skills of both the religions, the faiths, the political contracts that are written between governments, the political thinking of how governments function, and all the treaties that they write between each other.
They use the Babel language to basically hold us in slavery and servitude, and that locks us into joinder into negative performing contract. He's taken on this whole system and figured out how to hold them accountable and make them positively perform with the grammar. He broke the code to their Babel language, And they use the Babel language to basically hold us in slavery and servitude, and that locks us into joinder into negative performing contract. Where his stuff changes that around, no slavery, positive performance contract, one word means one meaning, not 900 different meanings. To think of all of this, like to figure out the noun space, because our contracts that we deal with now deal with past tense, negative no contract words, negative performance. No one signs the contract but you, so there's no one to be held accountable but you, right? Negative performance. So, and it's also in the future because they use words that are in the future. We're in the now space. We're not in the past, and we're not in the future because it hasn't occurred yet. You're always in the now. And Chief figured that out, and he locked it into the grammar so that everyone is on the same page. We're all here together in the now space. And we owe that man more than a medal. He's an amazing hero. I just can't, words can't even describe what he's done. It's like he beat him. He beat him in 1999. He captured the flag. He court-martialed all of them. He held court-martials after 1999. He kept going down to, he went to DC, down by the obelisk. There's a mall down there that he would go to and hold court. And he would court-martial everyone who wouldn't stop and correct. There's a title, a government title, Title 42, 1986, and it basically says, if you don't stop and correct, then you're part of the problem. So you're going to be held accountable. Like, if you tell someone, hey, you're a cop, and this guy's robbing a bank, and you don't go do something about it, then of course you're going to get fired or be held accountable as part of the bank robbery because you didn't do your job as a police officer. You didn't go over there and stop the bank robbery, right? The Title 42, 1986, Chief was the only one who stopped and corrected because Chief mailed all the bases. He did 10,000 mailings to all the bases in America. He served them legally and ran timelines on them. And it's real easy if you want to check to see if we are in martial law, just go to any local court or state governor's office, and there's going to be a spire on top of the flag. The spire means we're at war. They are at war with the people, basically, and that all contract is suspended. So if all contracts suspended, we're in martial law. And that's what they're hiding from the people.
Okay, so this is where the banking warfare and the warfare against the United States really kicks off. Back in 1933, Roosevelt was in office. A Nazi coup inspired and led by Gerald McGuire, backed by Prescott Bush, J.P. Morgan, Remington, and Goodyear, were trying to get Roosevelt out of office. And what they did was they tried to elicit the help of General Smedley Butler of the United States Marine Corps in an effort to help them get Roosevelt out of office. They figured that with Butler's influence over the American soldiers, that he could assemble 500,000 men and help them get Roosevelt out.
I appeared before the Congressional Committee, the highest representation of the American people, under subpoena to tell what I knew of activities which I believe might lead to an attempt to set up a fascist dictatorship. The plan as outlined to me was to form an organization of veterans, to use as a bluff, or as a club at least, to intimidate the government and break down our democratic institutions. The upshot of the whole thing was that I was supposed to lead an organization of 500,000 men, which would be able to take over the functions of government. I talked with an investigator for this committee who came to me with a subpoena on Sunday, November 18th. He told me they had unearthed evidence linking my name with several such veteran organizations. As it then seemed to me to be getting serious, I felt it was my duty to tell all I knew of such activities to this committee. My main interest in all this is to preserve our democratic institutions. I want to retain the right to vote, the right to speak freely, and the right to write. If we maintain these basic principles, our democracy is safe. No dictatorship can exist with suffrage, freedom of speech, and press.
Let me warn you, and let me warn the nation, against the smooth evasion that says, of course we believe these things. We believe in social security. We believe in work for the unemployed. We believe in saving homes. Cross our hearts and hope to die. We believe in all these things. But we do not like the way the present administration is doing them. Just turn them over to us. We will do all of them. We will do more of them. We will do them better. And most important of all, the doing of them will not cost anybody anything.
Thank God for Smedley Butler. He blew the whistle and their plan failed. However, these corporate heads, J.P. Morgan, Remington, Goodyear, and the others, were never indicted for this treasonous act. And so it continued on in the shadows. From there, it's been one long-range orchestrated event to get these guys into the White House. A few years later, Eisenhower comes into office. And under his watch, the CIA gets set up. And Eisenhower then gave a masterful speech on a conspiracy that he was worried about. And he told the American people, keep an eye on the military-industrial complex because he saw it as extremely dangerous.
Throughout America's adventure in free government, our basic purposes have been to keep the peace, to foster progress in human achievement, and to enhance liberty, dignity, and integrity among peoples and among nations. To strive for less would be unworthy of a free and religious people. Progress toward these noble goals is persistently threatened by the conflict now engulfing the world. It commands our whole attention, absorbs our very beings. We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method. Unhappily, the danger it poses promises to be of indefinite duration.
Under Eisenhower's watch, the Five-Star Trust was set up by the CIA. The Five-Star Trust consisted of 5 top men, those being George Bush Sr., Richard Armitage, General Edward Lansdale, William Colby, and General Robert L. Ferreira. Those were the 5 guys that ran the Five-Star Trust for the CIA. Now what the Five-Star Trust was, their objective was to set up the largest drug and money laundering system the world had ever seen. And it was called Operation Studebaker and Operation Clean Room, which was the money laundering systems into the operation. And that was ran out of Kentucky by a gentleman named Marion Horn. The main objective of this operation was to create money for the CIA so they wouldn't have to go and ask Congress for money. Doing so might divulge plans the CIA had going on, so they developed the largest drug and money laundering system the world has ever seen. The objective of which was to set up a drug running operation and then put all the money into a conglomeration of banks set up by the Rothschilds and the 13 banking families known as the Five Star Trust. That is Lucifer's Sustainable Development Fund. Okay, that's Lucifer's piggy bank. I'm just going to say it. So once this all got set up, Kennedy came into office, and Kennedy warned us of a massive conspiracy that scared him so bad he created U.S. Special Forces.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and we are, as a people, inherently and historically opposed to secret society, to secret oaths, and to secret proceedings. For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasion, on subversion instead of elections, on intimidation instead of free choice. It is a system which has conscripted vast human and material resources into the building of a tightly knit, highly efficient machine that combines military, diplomatic, intelligence, economic, scientific, and political operations. Its preparations are concealed, not published. Its mistakes are buried, not headlined. Its dissenters are silenced, not praised. No expenditure is questioned, no rumor is printed, no secret is revealed.
And he began working for the people to try to get the Federal Reserve out of here and get us back on a silver standard.
And that is, we can have honest, solid currency, like what President Kennedy was doing 10 days before he was assassinated.
Unfortunately, John F. Kennedy was murdered for his effort. Eventually, George Bush Sr. becomes head of the CIA, and Reagan takes office and sees this whole thing going on and warns the American people about it. He made several speeches warning the American people about the same thing Eisenhower and John F. Kennedy did.
Now let's set the record straight. There's no argument over the choice between peace and war, but there's only one guaranteed way you can have peace, and you can have it in the next second: surrender. Admittedly, there's a risk in any course we follow other than this, but every lesson of history tells us that the greater risk lies in appeasement. And this is the specter our well-meaning liberal friends refuse to face, that their policy of accommodation is appeasement. And it gives no choice between peace and war, only between fight or surrender. If we continue to accommodate, continue to back and retreat, eventually we have to face the final demand, the ultimatum. And what then? When Nikita Khrushchev has told his people he knows what our answer will be, he has told them that we're retreating under the pressure of the Cold War, and someday, when the time comes to deliver the final ultimatum, our surrender will be voluntary, because by that time, we will have been weakened from within spiritually, morally, and economically. He believes this because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better read than dead, or as one commentator put it, he'd rather live on his knees than die on his feet. And therein lies the road to war, because those voices don't speak for the rest of us. You and I know and do not believe that life is so dear and peace so sweet as to be purchased at the price of chains and slavery. If nothing in life is worth dying for, when did this begin? Just in the face of this enemy? Or should Moses have told the children of Israel to live in slavery under the Pharaohs? Should Christ have refused the cross? Should the patriots at Concord Bridge have thrown down their guns and refused to fire the shot heard round the world? The martyrs of history were not fools, and our honored dead who gave their lives to stop the advance of the Nazis didn't die in vain. Where then is the road to peace? Well, it's a simple answer after all. You and I, have the courage to say to our enemies, there is a price we will not pay, there is a point beyond which they must not advance. Winston Churchill said the destiny of man is not measured by material computations. When great forces are on the move in the world, we learn we're spirits, not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which, whether we like it or not, spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to take the last step into 1,000 years of darkness.
He was talking about Christianity and how if we ever became an atheistic country or a socialistic dictatorship under an atheistic regime, the United States would go down. So he tried to do everything in his power he could to stop what was going on. And George Bush Sr. tried 5 times to assassinate Kennedy. That's all been declassified. Sometime after that, George Bush Sr. becomes President of the United States. Now, this was a long-range warfare objective to get here, and they finally got there. Once this drug and money laundering system was all set up, they were going to then empower the United Nations to institute a global tax on everyone. At this particular juncture, by then, there is $230 quadrillion dollars in the Sustainable Development Fund that these guys are using as a black ops shadow government bank account. If they install a global tax on everyone in the world, how much bigger is this bank account going to get? At this point, the CIA was just going to be used to continue to go in and soften other countries up in a New World Order effort that was being launched out of the White House.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
The long-range objective. Now, this was all heading for the event horizon year of 1999. That's where this is all going. This is an event horizon year for the country and for the globe. Because once George Bush Sr. got in to be President of the United States, he saw the end of the third and final international bankruptcy coming, and he knew that the U.S. Constitution would dissolve, and the agreement between us and Great Britain would be dissolved at that point or voided and gone. The U.S. Constitution was going to be gone. So he went back to the crown, told his cousins what was going on, and they knighted him. The plan was to resubstantiate the U.S. Constitution so the king could still continue to oversee the international affairs in relation to shipping and commerce of the United States, and the New World Order would be launched out of Washington, D.C. And like I said, a global tax would be instituted by the United Nations, and their plans would be fulfilled. But before they can do that, they have to bring all the banks in under one banking system, under the Rothschilds banking system. So, the next objective, the Middle East. They got to go into the Middle East and get the oil. Why? Because there's only 9 banks left in the world that are not ran by the Rothschilds, 7 of which are in the Middle East. So if they go in and steal the oil, then the banks have nothing to create a banking system off of. They collapse, and then they got to borrow money from here. The warfare is real simple.
About 10 days after 9/11, I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me, and one of the generals called me and he said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They've just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we got a good military and we can take down governments. And he said, I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail. So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, are we still going to war with Iraq? And he said, oh, it's worse than that. He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, he said, I just got this down from upstairs, meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, this is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran. The truth is about the Middle East is, had there been no oil there, it would be like Africa. Nobody is threatening to intervene in Africa. The problem is the opposite. We keep asking for people to intervene and stop it. And there's no question that the presence of petroleum throughout the region has sparked great power involvement. Whether that was the specific motivation for the coup or not, I can't tell you, but there's always been this attitude that somehow we could intervene and use force in the region.
After that, they got to go after Chavez in Venezuela. That's the last vestige. Then their plans really will be complete. However, in 1999, their plans were foiled. Like I said, this was an event horizon year. They weren't the only ones that saw this thing coming to an end. A simple review at the high school level, high school education, clearly details the fact that Great Britain and the Vatican had gotten together and had decided that the United States would never come to allow a one-world global dictator to rule their country.
Tonight, we renew our resolve that America will never be a socialist country. I will not stand for it. If the United Nations is to be an effective organization, it must focus on the real problems of the world. This includes terrorism, the oppression of women, forced labor, drug trafficking, human and sex trafficking, religious persecution, and the ethnic cleansing of religious minorities. America will always be a leader in human rights. My administration is advancing religious liberty, opportunity for women, the decriminalization of homosexuality, combating human trafficking, and protecting unborn children.
And everybody knows that the Vatican has always had an agreement with the Nazis. Not so much Germany itself, but the Nazi party up there in Germany, operating out of Germany. They tried to set up a one-world global dictatorship under Hitler a long time ago.
We are talking about the biggest thuggery of all, and that is the Jesuits in the Vatican. I always thought that the CIA was the problem and the other intelligence agencies. Guess what? There's a grand intelligence agency that the Vatican puts out, and all of those other crooks are operating under the Vatican intelligence agency.
This was a long-range effort by these guys to come up from the rear and accomplish this objective. Now, the plan of the CIA, with the setup of the Five-Star Trust, was that the 5 top gentlemen, or I should say men, that were going to run the Five-Star Trust for the CIA were going to take turns being the director of the CIA. So those 5 guys could stay in command and control of this entire operation. The objective is to set up a one-world global dictatorship with Lucifer at the top, running the United Nations. And this is the piggy bank they're going to utilize to achieve that objective. But thank goodness, in 1999, as I said, this all revolved around the international bankruptcy of the United States, which, thank goodness, left the Washington, D.C. postal location open for capture on November 2nd, 1999 for 18 days. There was an 18-day period in there that the Crown was going to have to vacate the position and the post office would be open, and the United States would no longer have the ability to conduct international trade and commerce, hence the Florida Chads. That's because in 1999, the U.S. Constitution had come to an end and was closed out with the end of the third and final international bankruptcy. With that, they had the Amero set, the American European dollar, and they were about to surrender the United States back over to Great Britain. However, in 1999, during that 18-day vacancy, a miracle had taken place. Now, anyone who's listened to Eisenhower, Kennedy, and Reagan make their speeches will know that these gentlemen have been warning us of a group of people on this planet who are literally conspiring together in an effort to try to get the United States military to go to war for them in an effort to set this one world global government up. Okay, and that's what they were warning us about. They said we're a nation of peace. We have to remain and stay a nation of peace. There's a group of people out there who are trying to get us to surrender everything over to them so that they can utilize our military to go and achieve their world objectives. And that they were going to utilize or create some fanciful event that would allow them then to do that. And that's what we had with the Twin Towers event and the 9/11 episode. So they actually got what they finally wanted. That was an orchestrated event. There was never any terrorists, and terrorism itself is a fraud. You cannot have a war where there is no enemy. You don't have an enemy. Show me the enemy. There is no enemy. The enemies are, or the enemy is, anyone who does not go along with their new world order effort. That's who they're targeting, and that's who their terrorists are. This is a very simple warfare effort to follow. This entire soap opera is very easy to follow. The next thing they want are your guns, and they're going to come hard for them.
Guns will be taken. No one will be able to be armed. We will take all weapons.
Sometimes entering open houses with guns drawn. Homeowners had armed themselves to protect their mansions. Residents were handcuffed on the ground. In the end, police took their weapons but let them stay in their homes.
They were a little bit threatened because our weapons were bigger than their weapons.
That is the one thing that is stopping them from taking absolute, total, tactical command and control of this nation. And if they ever come for your guns, that is when you will have surrendered everything. They've already attacked your freedom of your right to choose, your freedom of speech, your freedom of the press, and now they're onto the Second Amendment. They are coming for our guns, but they will not get them. Anyone signing on to that kind of legislation, Nancy Pelosi being number one, wants to surrender your borders, take your weapons, force you to buy health care. These are your new world order extremists, okay? These guys are all working for Lucifer. They want a one world global dictator at the top. Who is it? It's Lucifer. We all know it. Biblical prophecy. Now, prior to 1999, there were two gentlemen who were working to get themselves out of the Masonic global government system that we've all been enslaved to. And here's the equation for that. Anybody that's been out there and studying this, I'm not going to go too far into. Russell J. Gould was the individual who then imparted the now time aspect into this grammatical construct, thereby giving it its own jurisdiction. So at this point, they knew that they had a whole new system of grammar that the world had never seen, that now being set up the way it was needed to be utilized to create an entirely new government system off of. So they had to go all the way back to where the crown derives its authorities. They went back all the way back into the Masonic books, and we'll just throw one out there: The Secret Teachings of Manly P. Hall, Secret Teachings of All Ages. They went back and they syntaxed this book and then rewrote it in this quantum construct, in this now time grammatical quantum construct. And they did that with all of the books, all of the Masonic books that are utilized to substantiate the Crown's authorizations here in the world, thereby giving their system its own venue. They've created an entirely new federal government system for the entire world to now join with. And it is a global federal government system, and it is based in truth. The entire system is based on mathematically certifiable grammar. It has its own elemental chart and periodic tables that one unwinds, creates a mathematical fact forward and backward in both directions. When this elemental chart and periodic table unwinds itself, it creates a affinity loop or a figure 8, thereby validating itself forward and backwards, just like the grammatical construct does. This thing was genius. Knowing what these men had at their fingertips, all they needed was the right time and place in history to launch this thing and take the greatest leap of faith ever taken by any two gentlemen ever recorded in the history of this planet. Once this thing was all set up, the books that they had syntaxed, they had filed with the Vatican and the NSA and several other locations on planet Earth. And the Vatican had been studying it for 5 years prior to what eventually took place in 1999. Russell J. Gould, with the help of David Wynn Miller, in 1999 saw the end of the third and final international bankruptcy coming. And Russell ran down to the United Nations and asked the United Nations if they had a copyright and patent on the Title IV flag. Knowing that it didn't matter if they did or they didn't, the contract would have been found to have been in grammatical fraud and grammatical error. So he rewrote the copyright and patent for the Title IV flag for the United States because it was about to be surrendered back over to Great Britain along with the country at the end of the third and final international bankruptcy. So he takes off up to the United Nations with the Title IV flag in tow and legs this whole government system in, and there at the United Nations he was declared a sovereign. In the process, he had just taken down the entire old monarch's system, because once they reestablished those Masonic books, they had to resubstantiate all of them in a quantum grammar construct, thereby disqualifying the old system completely from the bloodlines on. In that effort, have set this entire global government system up for the world. Russ then turns back around, and during that 18-day vacancy that post office was open, the king had to vacate due to international banking law for 18 days. Russell legs back in down here at the post office in Washington, D.C., taking tactical command and control of the United States and Canada, because that post office has always been attached to the D.C. location. And in doing so, he just brought to an end the New World Order effort to surrender the United States back over to the Crown, utilize the United Nations to install a global tax, because no one has a charter to exist anymore as a corporation under his authority. Everything has been disqualified. It's over. So prior to 1999, Russell J. Gould had rewritten a new U.S. Constitution, a Bill of Rights, a Declaration of Independence. He had resubstantiated the charter for all of the federal municipalities. He had captured the flag for the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard, and resubstantiated the entire construct in a quantum global effort, or quantum global manner. Thereby in 1999, when he moved into the Washington, D.C. postal location, taking tactical command and control of the United States and the rest of the North American continent, the New World Order and the Crown didn't have authorization to send our military to war for them after 9/11 had occurred, because they didn't have the authorization to do so. They had been disqualified. It was over. But you got to remember, this was an act of patriotism on his part. This is a patriot for the country. This guy is from Wyoming, okay? This guy's a patriot to the country. He saw the end of the third and final international bankruptcy coming. He knew we were about to be surrendered back over to Great Britain along with the flag, and it would hang like this in a surrendered manner. And he did his duty as a patriot. He stepped in where he needed to step in, and he saved the country and the flag from being surrendered. And he's still holding on to that Title IV flag for the people of this country and safeguarding it for the people of this country. Now, even more astounding was that prior to 1999 and him taking tactical command and control of Washington, D.C., he had built a brand new banking system. That's what this is. That is the banking system he put together. And at the same time as he legged into Washington, D.C., taking tactical command and control of the entire country, he legged this banking system in at the U.S. Treasury Department. So now we can get rid of the Fed. The Fed can go bye-bye. Shouldn't have been here since 1999. Once the charter expired and the bankruptcy had come to an end, the Federal Reserve did not have the authorization at that point to continue to print money for the United States, and the IRS was actually kicked out of the country because that was the collection agency for the debt. Well, if there's no more debt, there's no more need for an IRS. As a sovereign, he has a strategic metals contract that is based upon his elemental chart and his periodic table, giving him the authorization to print and mint his own coinage. This is the first time in the history of the country that this country actually has the power to print and mint its own coinage.
All countries register the style of how they're going to communicate. One of the styles that they register is their periodic tables. But because of the laws of boxing, anything in a box is not within the box. So when you look at a periodic table, you see the fine line around each element. It vacates it under style. So the element is not actually there. So when I published the disqualification of all periodic tables on the planet, within 72 hours, the CIA, the NSA, and the Department of Defense pulled me off the street to have a conversation about what the heck I had just done. Because of the fabric of communication and all molecular matter on the planet, I had just disqualified its origin to communicate. So I put it in a tetrahedron on trilateral angles and put my matters in triangles so I could triangulate and move my elements and my matters from point A to point B through time and space. Or I should say through now space. Time is just no longer.
We do not have to use the strategic metals contract of the old monarch. It's over. This was an act of patriotism. This was all due to the circumstances that revolved around the third and final international bankruptcy of this country coming to an end. And thank God we were saved. So after legging back in as Postmaster General here for the United States, he then proceeded to go around the world and reauthorize everything under his authority that would authorize or substantiate this system in its totality. So he had to go all the way back to the International Maritime Admiralty and Maritime Organization and reauthorize it under the Quantum Authority. He had to go back to the Universal Postal Union in Bern, Switzerland, and reauthorize it under his authority. He had to go back to the International Bureau of Weights and Measures and reauthorize it under his authority because he had just destroyed all banking and chemistry on planet Earth with this elemental chart and this periodic table in association with this system of weights and measures in conjunction with the grammar. He had to go back into the International Patent Office because this all has to be patented. So it disqualified all the old patents on planet Earth all the way back to the very beginning. So he had to resubstantiate all that. And all of that needs to be resubstantiated. Everybody's patent on all of their products now have to be resubstantiated in this quantum manner or under this quantum global construct and system. That way their patents can't be harvested, stolen by the old system any longer. They've all been saved. Everything has been saved. But he had to go around the planet and set this whole thing back up under his authority, all these locations. And what they ended up doing when the United Nations said, well, okay, but what land do you choose? They said, him and Dave said they choose the land of the courts during the time of the contract. Why? Because that is where the courts, or all the contracts, are defended, is in the courts. Well, that's why Dave keeps talking about we own the land of the courts, because their system just took down the old system, and the old system was enforced in the courts. Well, this system now rules the courts. So if you bring your old grammatical system in there and your old contracts into the courts, and they're not done properly, correctly, and truthfully, using the quantum grammar construct, they are disqualified and nullified as grammar fraud and bank fraud, all of it, across the board. They took him into court and they literally beat the hell out of this guy on a couple of different occasions, and he won. And the Navy was behind him and supporting him all the way. After 12 years of these guys not wanting to play ball and just do things correctly and move forward with this entire new global government system, Russell J. Gould, seeing that the Benjamin Franklin Post Office had now come out of bankruptcy, and it had come out of bankruptcy in 1999, right? But nobody remembered it, nobody saw it. So what he did was, when he came back into Washington, D.C. and filed the flag in there and legged in as the Postmaster General for the United States and as the new Postmaster General of the world, he rewrote a new U.S. Constitution between his government and ours. And it's the same version of the one we had with Great Britain, only this one doesn't have the 1 million laws attached to it.
So I opened up the Benjamin Franklin Postal Court, the Federal Postal Court, and became Chief Judge, bringing David aboard as a witness and a federal postal judge as well. And we started looking at the procedures of syntax again and ordering the courts open and ordering the Federal Postal Court open to hold trial against fraudulent grammar. Unfortunately, a few years later, David's mind started slipping, and I noticed it tremendously in 2014, started noticing it in 2014. He couldn't remember dates, he couldn't remember things, and his mind was really slipping. And as from 2014 to 2017, I really was at a loss of words for how to handle him, because he was such a good guy, he had such a great message as far as what he was trying to articulate with the grammar. But he couldn't remember anything. And so in 2017, I had to court-martial him. In 2018, David Eiffelwing Miller passed away. And I had to carry on with the corporate structure and to conduct the business that we had set up in our living wills in our corporate entities. For our federal postal court, for our quantum banking system, for all the mechanics that we had placed together to create a better world for the people in grammar. And I complied with those terms within 45 days of his passing, and I was left with the only person with the copyright livery to use the correct grammar on the copyrights for contract.
We know there's always been two governments operating here, the King of Great Britain's and ours. That's why you get the two-party system, right? The Democratic and the Republic. So he rewrote the U.S. Constitution and the Bill of Rights. It's still standing. The Declaration of Independence is still standing. And because they didn't want to move forward with it and wanted to keep going forward with this New World Order surrender effort in the year 2012, and on the date December 21st, 2012, end of the Mayan calendar, he legs back in down here at the Philadelphia Post Office in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, the Benjamin Franklin Postal Court, or Post Office, and reopen the entire U.S. government back up for the people with a new U.S. Constitution, the same Bill of Rights, Declaration of Independence, and it's all been quantized into this mathematical, grammatical fact. He saved the United States from surrender and takeover. He has saved the planet from a New World Order effort to conquer us. He has saved the planet from a New World Order effort under one man, a global dictator we all know as Lucifer, and has stopped them from being able to present the mark of the beast to all of us and attach us to this banking system as slaves. It's all been disqualified. It's all been shut down. It's over. The victory is ours. This is Our Lady of Victory. This is our victory.
7 decades of history have passed through this hall in all of their richness and drama. Where I stand, the world has heard from presidents and premiers at the height of the Cold War. We have seen the foundation of nations. We have seen the ringleaders of revolution. We have beheld saints who inspired us with hope, rebels who stirred us with passion, and heroes who emboldened us with courage. All here to share plans, proposals, visions, and ideas on the world's biggest stage. Like those who met us before, our time is one of great contests, high stakes, and clear choices. The essential divide that runs all around the world and throughout history is once again thrown into stark relief. It is the divide between those whose thirst for control deludes them into thinking they are destined to rule over others, and those people and nations who want only to rule themselves. I have the immense privilege of addressing you today as the elected leader of a nation that prizes liberty, independence, and self-government above all. The United States, after having spent over $2.5 trillion since my election to completely rebuild our great military, is also by far the world's most powerful nation. Hopefully, it will never have to use this power. Americans know that in a world where others seek conquest and domination, our nation must be strong, in wealth, in might, and in spirit. That is why the United States vigorously defends the traditions and customs that have made us who we are. Like my beloved country, each nation represented in this hall has a cherished history, culture, and heritage that is worth defending and celebrating, and which gives us our singular potential and strength. The free world must embrace its national foundations. It must not attempt to erase them or replace them. Looking around and all over this large, magnificent planet, the truth is plain to see. If you want freedom, take pride in your country. If you want democracy, hold on to your sovereignty. And if you want peace, love your nation. Wise leaders always put the good of their own people and their own country first. The future does not belong to globalists. The future belongs to patriots. The future belongs to sovereign and independent nations who protect their citizens, respect their neighbors, and honor the differences that make each country special and unique.
Now what he has done is he has purified the whore of Babylon and prepared her as the bride of Christ. And now he's got one foot in the sea, which is the Admiralty and Maritime Jurisdiction, which was held by the King of Great Britain up in Washington, D.C., and he has the civil jurisdiction law of the land, the the Admiralty footing and the terra firma footing, and he's bridging the gap, rapturing you out of the land of the dead, where you're once considered to be missing or presumed to be dead or lost at sea with your birth certificate system, ships you in through the Washington, D.C. postal location, out through the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania postal location, civil jurisdiction law of the land where the blood testifies to the life, and you are brought back into the land of the living and saved. Your soul is saved, your country is saved, you are saved. This is Our Lady of Victory. Now you got to remember, the New World Order wasn't waiting for God to send down the seventh angel to fix everything, right? These guys are waiting for Lucifer to stand up and give everyone the mark of the beast. So what happened after 1999? What you had happen there was a private corporation move into Washington, D.C. to run the government for the people of the United States, and it was under the command and control of George Bush Jr., who then declared war on the Middle East after they dropped the trade centers in New York. This was an orchestrated warfare plan by this group, the same group that started here. Okay, this was the same group of folks that initiated this bombing. So these guys ultimately got what they wanted. They got tactical command and control of the militaries to go fight their wars so they could set up their one world global government. The next administration that moved in 8 years later, once again, a private corporation. The first corporation was identifying itself with a 3x5 boat flag. It's not registered with the United Nations as the Title IV flag is, or any other flags around the world are. They're much longer. Okay, they're coffin flags. They're long enough to cover a coffin. The 3x5 boat flag is not. It's a replica of the Title IV flag. 8 years after this guy was in office, the second administration moves in to run the country, and they've got a 2.5 by 2.5 size flag, Obama. This is a Ken and Barbie flag. It's not registered with any country in the world, anywhere. You could buy it at Toys R Us. And as a matter of fact, I don't even think they sell them there. So this corporation comes in and says, yes, we can. Yes, we can what? Force you to buy health care? That removes your freedom of choice. So now they've attacked your freedom of choice, your freedom of speech, your freedom of the press. The television is still registered by the FCC as an entertainment device. Nothing coming out of it has to be real or even is real. That's why you hear Trump today saying it's all fake news. Everything you guys are seeing is what these guys are broadcasting that they want you to follow. That is their global narrative. And that is their that's the global narrative. Well, in psychological operations or psychological warfare, tactical command and control of the global narrative is what we strive for. However,
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
This is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
This is the global narrative now. This is our victory. This is Our Lady of Victory, guys. It has defeated all of this across the board. We don't have to follow none of it.
It really all depends on whether people understand that the media that is giving them disinformation is owned by the Federal Reserve and this system of control. And it's really up to humanity to realize that they're being hoodwinked, that when they turn on the news and they get the news from the mainstream media, they're just being fed propaganda.
I have the Constitution. With 1 foot in the sea and 1 foot on the land, I can help you perform and convey maritime and admiralty contracts so that the citizens of this country and the federal postal government stay afloat for a long time. And so if you please get a hold of me, I can help you. I have General Mattis, you know who I am. General Dunsford, you know who I am. You know my banking system's true, correct, and complete and in position. So you need to do the correct thing here for the citizens and the soldiers under your command. For they're going to watch this and they're going to question the authenticity of your authorizations. And so they should. Why? Because they all went in and registered with the post office first. The post office lacks a flag, it lacks a president, it lacks a constitution. It's nothing. They're only under an assumption, presumption, and an opinion. They're not there with any facts. Thus the soldiers should be trying to get a hold of me. They should be beating down my doors. They do want correctness. Why? Because they're out there terraforming everywhere else. And that needs to stop. That needs to stop. We need to take care of our land. Bring our troops home. This is what needs to happen. We don't need to be out in anybody else's. We need to make a playground here. Let everybody else make playgrounds there. Not our job. I would like to thank the citizens that are legally in this country and in our homeland that have taken the time out of their busy schedules to watch this documentary. I'd like to thank you for your concerns of the matters of the federal postal system. And I'd also like to tell you I'm sorry that you were screwed over by the banks and the fraudulent judicial system who have stolen your homes and have forced you into a life of poverty. This does not have to be. You have closure on the facts. This documentary was given so that the citizens of this country and the government and the people that are in position to make changes can find out true and correct facts on the completion of the fixing of the system, which I have mirrored from both the land and the sea. At this time, I would like to thank each and every one of you and tell you, do not leave your homes. The banks were paid. They fractionalized the notes and then kicked you out of your homes. This is fraud. 100% fiction. Each and every one of you, there is a tremendous amount of wealth and value coming your way as the federal government gets a hold of me and I get into my position to delegate wealth and riches and value down to the legal citizens of this country. You will have your homes. You do not have to fear the government, nor the police, the public safety officers, nor get involved in any race war, because grammar doesn't identify race. It gives you full closure so you can have peace and harmony amongst each other. But those of you who are fraudulently in our country with expired visas and passports and have walked into our country through false and misleading ways, you need to leave now. And that's a command. They had a conversation with me that they were going to be waiting for my commands at the Pentagon and that they were dropping me into my first war, which I found quite fascinating because, number one, they didn't have authorization to move me, and that they were going to take me to a war, and I didn't comprehend. I'm like, I'm Chief Judge of the United States. How the heck can they be taking me to war? But they took me up to Michigan, and in the federal courts in the state of Michigan flew the state flag in joint tenets with the federal flag. And why that is Michigan was one of the 5 territories when Abraham Lincoln went to renew the bankruptcy to fight the South. He had to go pick up 5 states because he had 13 stars on his Union Jack. And when he went to borrow the money, they told him no. So he had to pick up 5 states. He picked up Indiana, Ohio, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan. So I knew the trick. I knew what was going on. Since I owned the flag, the feds couldn't kick the state out of the federal courthouse because they were giving back their sovereignty. So the federal prosecutors were running 2 sets of books. They were running as state prosecutors and federal prosecutors simultaneously. The state was running 2-day turnarounds. The feds were running 3-day turnarounds under rescission timeline. So there was 2 sets of books running. So it was very tricky to navigate through, but I did. And I won the case. But when I got there, the federal prosecutors tied me up into a chair and they started dancing around me, saying they use adverbs, verbs, adjectives, and pronouns. They know that I use prepositional phrases to certify my facts. And they were going to hold me for 25 years if I didn't comply and use an adverb, adjective, or pronoun. Use a no fact. They says, we only use no facts here. Guy was spitting in my face, dancing all around. He was a real jerk. His name was Donald Davis. I got a long memory, and he deserves what he's got coming to him. Anyway, he's dancing around and yelling and spitting in my face and thinking he's real tough. I just kind of looked at him. And the U.S. Marshals came in kindly, and they pushed the federal prosecutor off of the guy and off of me. They pushed that federal Donald Davis off. They says, don't you get it? He says, this guy ain't afraid of you. Heck, he ain't even afraid of us or any of our friends. Guy just ain't afraid. Back off him. They unchained me off that chair and they took me out in the hallway. And they walked me back into the booking room. I thought they were going to try to book me again. So I come in there and I stuck my hands up. And they're like, no one's going to we're not going to kick your ass this time. We're done kicking your ass. We kick your ass all the time when you don't do nothing. You just look at us. I just looked at them. And every time they beat me up, I couldn't get mad at them. I was frustrated, but I couldn't get mad. Kept my cool. Always keep your cool when you're in a fight. No need to get... Don't ever let anyone tell you who to hate. And don't ever let anyone tell you who to fight. You look at the circumstances, you evaluate the social engineering, and you think through it for yourself. Don't ever, anyone out there that's watching this, don't ever let anyone tell you who to hate. Anyway, I didn't hate those people. Even though they beat me up a lot, I didn't hate them. I knew they were bound to a system and parameters. And I knew that the bad people were hiding behind them. And I knew that. So I couldn't get angry with them. But it hurt. Hurts getting beat up a lot, especially when they knock you out and they welt you all up when they're hitting you with their batons. That hurts. Anyway, U.S. Marshals, they took me into that back room. I think I'm going to get another ass kicking, so I'm kind of getting ready for the ass kicking. And they said, no. This guy's like, no, we're not going to hurt you. Hey, we watched the videos of you at the U.S. Supreme Court. We believe every word you're saying. You are Chief Judge. Can't believe you're here. They said, hey man, what's going on with the Bush and Cheney court-martialing? We want to know. And I explained it to them. As I've explained to you, that since the United States government ceased to exist, and they said, hey, we believe you. He says, but these people here are bad. They don't like you. They don't like what you're doing and the attention that you're bringing to the situation. I says, well, they got all the public cameras. They got all the public media. They haven't told the citizens the truth. There is no United States government. There is no president. This is all a scam. They're like, yeah, we know. Can't do nothing about it. Our hands are tied, but we're going to be nice to you here. We're not going to beat you up. We believe you. It says, however, you have a corporate partner. And it says, David Winkle and Miller. In his performances of claiming to be there with you, he's never there. He's not in the videos. So we don't believe him. We believe you, but we don't believe him. And they asked me, this is, was David with you at the Supreme Court and at the Pentagon? I said, no, he was not. That is correct, because we've watched the cameras. You're not going to trick our cameras. That is you standing there, and that is only you standing there. I says, correct. They says, but we want to show you what Dave's really about. I says, well, I hope he's about correctness, because that's what I'm about. They said, yes, we know. And so then they wanted to talk to me about what happened at the Vatican. And I explained to them my position at the Vatican as a keymaster and as a commander-in-chief and comptroller of the global currency and the things that I went under contract with over there. And they said, yes, we believe you. We saw the videos. You are over there. You did do that. You are this person. Strange as that may sound, they said, man. They said, you met some really interesting people. I said, yeah, I went behind some pretty neat doors, for sure. They says, we believe you. They says, now, what's going on with this periodic table? So I explained to them about elements and matter and laws of boxing and why we put judges in judges' boxes and juries in jury boxes, so we the people don't have to consider anything that they ever say because of the laws of four cornering. And they said, yes, we know about the boxes. Anything in a box is not there. I says, yes, judges in judges' boxes and juries in jury boxes, so we the people don't have to consider anything they say. They're like, very good, you know the secrets. I says, yes, I do know the secrets. I said, the same thing holds true with the periodic tables. As we were educated as children and young men and women, we learned that about the elements in our science classes. The only problem is the elements were all in a box. Anything in a box isn't there, so they taught us nothing and gave us nothing, so when we come to the land of contract, we would have nothing. And they said, the land of contract, I said, it's the only place it counts on the planet, in the middle of these neutral ports worldwide.
I'm a sovereign. I'm the only sovereign in the United States. I have my own country. My own country, and guess what the land of my country is? The land of the courtroom during the time of contract. No one has ever claimed the land of the courtroom during the time of contract. So every courtroom I go into on planet Earth is my country on planet Earth because I was appointed to me through the United Nations, where all 200 countries treated with me, saying when you come into a courtroom, you are the senior chief judge under land of the contract, and because your contracts are written in quantum grammars, which creates the constitution of the land of the contract. The courtroom. And the courtroom is not a geographical location, it's paper, folks. The land of paper is the contract. Because the contract of the paper is not bonded to the room is just a point of convenience. So, what is a courtroom? A courtroom is a piece of paper.
I says, the ports are bound to the Universal Postal Union. And I am the controlling Postmaster General of the Global Postal Union in Bern, Switzerland with my construct. They said, yes, you are. Now, a really neat thing happened. When I was in trial in Michigan, the clerk of court for the federal courts had all my treaties and contracts that were on file in the at the Universal Postal Union in Bern, Switzerland. She had those stacks in her clerk's booth. So all my contracts that were on file with the Universal Postal Union, she had in her booth to give her amnesty from prosecution. Because they couldn't, it was a ruse. They couldn't really do anything to me because she couldn't put her mark and process anything forward. Because she was under joinder with the postal system through the Department of Transportation. And I was the only one with fee for freight to be there because they were on my land. However, they were flying the Michigan flag in the state courts. So I ran the timelines and pulled some judge moves on them and was able to win the trial. After I won the trial, they brought in the U.S. military to talk to me. And for days I spoke with the U.S. military in my booking cell because they couldn't book me And in that trial, I did, in my stay there at Newaygo County, I did have to go through without some food for a while. They used food as a weapon, trying to break me it wasn't too bad. It was like 45 days without food. So it wasn't too terribly bad. So I went to like from 170 pounds at that trial to probably like 120, 122 pounds. So it wasn't so severe, but it was enough to, when you go without food for 45 days, it's a real eye opener. That's for sure. Because they were using the food as a weapon to try to book me if I would eat the food. Then they would take me down to booking and try to get my fingerprints, and I wasn't going to check into their hotel, glorified hotel, and their jailers are just function as babysitters. I don't need any glorified babysitters. So anyway, I won that trial, but the Department of Affairs for the state of Michigan came in and handed me the state flags. They surrendered their flags to me in booking, which was interesting. And the U.S. military came to talk to me about a lot of things. I can't really get into those conversations, but they asked me for a lot of support in specific areas. Some things I could support them in, some things I couldn't. One of the things I can't support them in is the dinar. The dinar is based upon a war that was a lie. I don't participate with the Bush lies. Like those people that's a scam. That's fake. That's fraud. Deep state fraud. The Bush family is nothing more than a fake family which preys upon the ignorance of those that they employ around them. And they promise them things that they can't because the Bushes don't have any authorization to do anything. That's all fake. And so, and they know it.